होते हैं कि how you can categorize people and how you can know about other people, और जितने magazines होते हैं उसमें कई दफा आप ऐसे articles पढ़ते हैं कि how to know someone just by looking or just by talking, or what are the 10 signs, how they're feeling, how you can interpret. So जब से इंसानियत या इंसान जब से शुरू हुआ है तो we know कि वो अपने he's trying to observe his surroundings, he's trying to interact with other people, he's trying to find some kind of understanding which is going on around him. So, what are the targets? How how this all comes into play today? So, as the things started changing, psychoanalysis जब start हुआ तो psychoanalysis was being done to understand the personality, to understand the hidden parts of the personality. And Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, he realized that it is one of the most difficult tasks undertaken. That how to make sense of someone, how to make sense of a person who is a complete person in a way, and what are their emotions, what are their impulses, how they want to do different stuff, you know. So there are a lot of uses of knowing about personality. There are a lot of benefits. The benefits goes beyond the psychiatric domain. For example, it has a lot of application in forensics, criminology, law. So, in fact, there is no job or kind of anything which requires an interview where the interviewer is trying to assess a little bit about the person who is sitting next to the person, because it's making a long-term commitment. Then the personality also comes into play when we want to take someone as a partner in our business. So if you want to do a business, you will try to find a person, and usually with our own intuition, we are moving with our own intuitions. So we're doing stuff with just our kind of natural inclination towards knowing people. Okay? So we try to trust someone, we're going with our intuition, we're going with our gut feeling, right? So gut feeling could be correct. उसका मतलब ही यही है कि it's kind of very, very visceral kind of feeling about somebody else. But at the same time, there is a science behind there is a science behind this process. There is a whole kind of there is a scientific data, and I think in the history of psychiatry, the personality assessment has gone through a lot of small evolutionary phases. So when I was a psychiatric resident, there was another kind of system we were being taught. There were some other terminologies, and we learned that and we were told about the personality development through our own teachers. I was trained at Services Hospital under the supervision of Professor Nasir Said Khan, and we had two, three wonderful consultants over there. For example, there was Dr. Shahid, Dr. Ismail, Dr. Smira, and Dr. Shahid would love about to talk about personality. So I remember that this one in one lecture he talked about the big five traits. It's a very common theme these days. Uh, it's about the big five traits, which kind of describe a person. But the fantasy, the storyline, if you start about the storyline of the personality, it's a very interesting story. I don't want to bring a lot of history in this lecture, so I will just briefly touch a few points. I always remember this house officer who came and he said, okay, why psychiatry is obsessed about the history? And I said, it's a very valid question. We know that you just want to have the skill, but a little bit of history connects you with the topic, and it kinds of makes a long-term memory in the brain. So the history is something like this, that a lot of scientists wanted some clear indications how to classify people, how to classify the personalities. And one of the most significant work was done in Germany. Um, under Hitler, there was this scientist called Eysenck, Eysenck, Eysenck. So Eysenck was a brilliant kind of professional, and what he did was he started developing, because the Germany was given the task to find or to prove that they are kind of a super race. So under the tutelage of Hitler, what they did was they tried to develop different classification systems, and under that classification system, what they did was they introduced different terminologies. For example, they came up with a term which we very commonly use. आप सब लोग इस्तेमाल करते होंगे, and you can comment if you want. So the two big terminologies which came out were called introvert and extrovert. So this was the first kind of major classification, that either somebody's an introvert or somebody's an extrovert. Then a series of new scientists came, and what they did was there was this one very obsessed combination or couple of people. What they did was they went through all the dictionary and sorted out all the words which could describe a person. In that हजारों में लफ्ज मेरे ख्याल में, I think if I'm not forgetting, it's about like 18,000 words. And then they started simplifying them. A lot of words which had the same meaning, they used to cut those. They used to reduce the amount of words. और करते 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 that came to a very small, sizable domain. Or so this is a kind of a history how the personality analysis began and how the it came into psychology. और अब इस वक्त ऑनलाइन आप जाएंगे तो there are a lot of tests you can do, some tests your own self. There is this test called personality factor 16 personality factor test. Then there are Jungian personality assessments. उसमें भी they tell you about कि how much you have different capacities. Um, सो टेस्ट तो बहुत सारे हैं, और उसमें जो बहुत एडवांस एक टेस्ट हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, दैट टेस्ट इज कॉल्ड MMPI, और मल्टीपल Minnesota multiple personality assessment test. So MMPIs are the tests which we do in the very professional, where we have to do high profile cases. Now all these tests, especially the जितना बड़ा टेस्ट है, जितना कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, उतना ही you need an expertise to carry them out. So there's a whole, there are thousands of psychologists who are trained just in administrating the test, because test is just like a car, and if you're not trained, especially about the test, its efficacy is not that good. Okay, so the routine and what we kind of carry out, our self-administered test, that is just give you a kind of a rough estimate of the personality. Now, saying all this, today's target objective, Joe, which I would like at the end you can comment how much you are able to grasp the topic, would be that the final year student, or all any listener, if anybody else is here, they are able to carry out a minimal kind of assessment of a pre-morbid personality of a patient who comes to your outdoor, right? Okay. So let's start with a very basic definition, that what is personality? And then we will jump to what is pre-morbid personality. So personality is a long-term pattern of enduring traits over which are stable over a long duration of time. So कुछ ऐसी खसूसियात जो लंबे अरसे तक इंसान के अंदर, उसके शख्सियत के अंदर रास्ख हो जाएं, परमानेंट हो जाएं, और वो काफी अरसे तक स्टेबल रहें. तो मिसाल के तौर पे प्रैक्टिकली we say that till 17-18 years the personality is evolving. You are a person, kind of a person at around age 16 to 18, and that kind of pattern is going to keep on echoing all your life. हालांकि जो एडवांस्ड डेवलपमेंटल साइंटिस्ट हैं या साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं या जो साइकियाट्रिस्ट से लोग काम कर रहे हैं, वो कहते हैं बच्चे के पैदा होने से ही यू अंडरस्टैंड उसका जो बिहेवियर है पहले एक साल में, that kind of lays the foundation that how the child is growing going to grow. लेकिन अब जितना आप पीछे जाओगे उतना ही सिम्टम्स हो जाएंगे वेग, उनको पिक करना है मुश्किल, ठीक है, क्योंकि वी आर नॉट राइट नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट वेरी एडवांस्ड काइंड ऑफ लर्निंग, वी जस्ट वांट a basic learning that a patient who comes, we are able to put him into some kind of category and we can make some sense of the person who we are talking to, right? तो अगर हम डिटेल में जाते हैं तो उसमें बच्चों की भी उन्हें क्लासिफिकेशन की है कि जो बच्चा बचपन में ज्यादा रोता है, what what traits he will going to develop, जो बच्चा बहुत चीखें मारता है, शाउट करता है, वो किस तरह आगे बढ़ेगा, जो बच्चा बिल्कुल खामोश रहता है, बिल्कुल मस्त है, कोई तंग नहीं कर रहा किसी से, नो ना, उसकी एक और ट्रेजेक्ट्री बनेगी. तो दीज आर वेरी बेसिक लाइंस. तो अभी जो हम बात कर रहे हैं अभी, our main purpose is that person who is available to you in the outdoor and you kind of want to uh, work over the personality, their personalities. We have invited some PhD scholars and psychologists over here too, so they will be commenting regarding the topic simultaneously. So Dr. Afshin is saying that there are infant scales also present. Yes, there are. Uh, Now, when we talk about premorbid personality, the premorbid is that state where what happens is that the premorbid is the point when the patient comes. So premorbid is the point. So we ask the patient that what was the point when you were perfectly all right in your previous state of health? क्योंकि जो patient आपके पास आया है, the personality he's projecting at that time, he's not the person, he's not at that time the person who he in his usual self he is. तो ये कॉन्सेप्ट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बिकॉज अक्सर जो मिस्टेक होती है, ब्लंडर होता है, वो ये होता है कि वो जो उसकी डिजीज स्टेट है जिसमें वो बहुत अपसेट है, he's at the worst of his condition, he's very impulsive, he's very angry or he's very neurotic and socially withdrawn. This state is not his usual state. Or theoretically it could be a usual state, but you have to confirm and you ask different questions and you make a clear line, or you try to make a clear line by asking different questions. For example, you ask कि मिसाल के तौर पे the opening sentence which I use is कि I'm going to ask you about some questions about your personality, and by personality I means the qualities which you usually have or which people think you usually kind of people think of you as a special kind of person. It could be your parents, it could be your friends, it could be your own sense of your own self. And I'm not talking about the period which you have just given me that you're upset from 1 month or after your divorce or after your mishap in the family, you know. So let me take you 1 month back or 1 year back or 2 years back or before the starting of the drug usage. What kind of a person you were? आपकी कैसी शख्सियत थी, लोग आपके बारे में क्या कहते थे आपको आपके बारे में बताने के लिए, आप बहैसियत उस्ताद, बहैसियत खामन, बहैसियत बेटा, बहैसियत बीवी, बहैसियत पड़ोसी, किस तरह की आपको लोग किन अल्फाज में आपको याद करते हैं, आपके बारे में बताते हैं. So you give them a kind of small kind of introduction and then they kind of report back, and once or twice you have to kind of clarify this concept that we're not talking about the disease state, but we're talking a little behind that, the number of years. थोड़ा सा background history में ले जाते हैं. So uh, today we are just going to talk about the practical points, not very, we won't go very theoretical, लेकिन जो points जहाँ पे जरूरी होंगे वो I'll link to the academics also. So this is a terminology which was very much in practice. It was very much kind of used. Still, it's used in the books, and it is the clusters. तो clusters हैं कि बहुत सारी personalities को हम तीन clusters में divide करते हैं. There's a cluster A, there's a cluster B, and cluster C. क्लस्टर ये जो डायग्राम है ये क्लस्टर ए को बता रहा है। क्लस्टर ए में further they have divided into three groups. So this is like a cluster A is all full of odd kind of groups. People are all kind of odd. So there could be a paranoid, somebody who's very paranoid, is kind of, he does not trust anyone and he does not trust the system. He's kind of, he's unable to make a close connection with anyone. So paranoid, we all are paranoid to a certain extent. So sometimes I tell people, yeah, Pakistan mein, current environment mein, a certain degree of paranoia is very important. At least I have some paranoid traits, I would say. So traits hona is not a problem. ट्रेड्स का मतलब है कि क्वालिटी होना या फीचर्स होना। आप समझें कि 0 से 100 तक वी ऑल माइट हैव सम 30%, 10%, 20% पैरानोया फ्लेवर, राइट। लेकिन अगर किसी के अंदर कोई 60-70% है, इतना ज्यादा पैरानोया कि that is affecting his whole personality, that would be a problem actually. So पर्सनालिटी डिसऑर्डर इज समथिंग एल्स। अभी हम सिर्फ पर्सनालिटी असेसमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं। लॉन्ग टर्म में if somebody has very troublesome personality traits and they cause a major problem in his relationships, in his work, in his connection with his own self, then through assessment we might say the person is having a personality disorder. But right now we are just going through a simple task of doing a personality assessment, right? So cluster A, we have this paranoid group. Then there is a group called a schizoid. A schizoid is basically a very odd person, a very socially inept person, somebody who does not kind of looks that he gels well. He's very quiet. He's sitting at the corner. He's not really into meeting people. But if you talk to the person is kind of sane. He could be having very unusual hobbies. He could have very unusual way of kind of meeting with people. और अब कई फिल्मों में कई कैरेक्टर्स ऐसे लोगों पे बनाए जाते हैं जहाँ पे आपको दिखाते हैं कि एक संकी किस्म का लॉयर है या एक संकी किस्म का प्रोफेशनल है। यू कैन ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंड थ्रू द वर्ड एक्सट्रीम एक्सेंट्रिक। ठीक है, ये टर्मिनोलॉजीज इसमें बहुत ज्यादा जोर नहीं डालूंगा इस वक्त, ये थोड़ी सी अब हिस्ट्री में चली गई हैं बिकॉज the recent classifications have kind of abandoned them. Okay, but still they're very interesting. I think for a lot of time in the coming years, they will still be used to understand. All our teachers, professors at the current time have gone through this kind of learning. Schizotypal is kind of a little bit more dramatic. It's more like close. It has a close association with psychosis also, and these people have some kind of a remarkable dreams and remarkable experiences or मूड भी इनके थोड़े से ज्यादा वॉलेटाइल होते हैं somehow. तो अभी अभी जो हमारा मेन टास्क है मैं उसकी तरफ चलता हूँ। ये दिस वाज जस्ट टू गिव यू एन इंट्रोडक्शन। हम इस पर थोड़ी सी बात करेंगे क्लस्टर्स पे भी। Just for your own interest, I thought I will just talk about one of the personalities, just to give you a flavor of what we do in our daily kind of assessments. So I see a lot of patients coming with a kind of a diagnosis called borderline diagnosis. And in borderline, what happens is when a patient comes, and usually when it is seen that this patient has a lot of anger and is always kind of moving around between two extremes. Is that sometimes it's very good, look at you're the best doctor, you have the best relationship, you're the best boyfriend, you're the best parent, and on the other side, the other jump is, oh, you're the worst, you're the crazy guy. So we all have some friends who are always kind of branding us all the time. या तो आपको पेडेस्टल पे बिठा देंगे या फौरन नीचे गिराएंगे। पेडेस्टल पे बिठाएंगे तो ऊपर उठाते उठाते ऊपर ही ले जाएंगे, और नीचे गिराएंगे तो खूब उस आपसे कोई गलत बंदा कोई होगा नहीं somehow. So this is a basic concept. This is more like a Western concept. and we have to kind of culturally adapt, and we have to see it, how does it come into play. It's one of the most popular personality disorders used in West, even in Pakistan. A lot of work is being done in Pindi, for example. In Pindi, we have this Institute of Psychiatry, and we have this group called a study focused group on borderline personality, especially because a lot of females, especially, it is somehow considered to be more in the females, and the reasons we will discuss later. But what happens is that we talked about defense mechanism in third year called splitting, where we divide everything between good and black. You know, so we are unable to see the shades of gray. We are unable to appreciate the subtlety, the subtleness which can happen in a personality. So I'm not very much in favor of borderline personality disorder. Very infrequently I do have to use it because after you take some time, because you know what happens is that it's a bit stigmatizing. No one wants to be labeled borderline, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, it is sometimes overdiagnosed. You know, so in certain kind of environment, it's very common to have certain kind of behaviors. For example, uh, if there's there's an age of kind of dating, and you know, like guys and girls are kind of moving around, and if they kind of go through a breakup, so in Pakistan, a lot of breakup is a messy breakup. You know, it's kind of the girl is told, you know, we'll get married and we'll have a kind of a relationship, and you know, मंगनी होगी, शादी होगी साहब. तो जब कोई लड़का को चक्कर दे के निकल जाता है, somehow there's a massive breakdown on the girl, kind of, because the society is predominantly uh, heavily inclined towards the male side. So all the sport is towards the male. Although the dynamics are being changed very slowly at a snail pace, probably. But what happens is that few people cannot take the kind of that the force of the deterioration. So when there is a massive trust block, when there is a massive history of trust deficit, so a person does get kind of, you know, can gets angry and kind of suicidal, and tries to cut themselves. And we have a lot of patients coming with these kind of traits. But still, I'm very cautious to label anyone a specific disorder unless there's a long history and there's some very clear signs and a consistent pattern over a number of years. So it's difficult to label someone over one sitting or two sittings or probably a few months even, because personality is kind of a, you are kind of talking about a long period of time. So we have to be a bit cautious before we label anyone with this topic. But जहाँ पे चीजें हो रही हैं वहाँ पे it gives you a good framework, and then we can use it. Uh, just for your interest and this kind of a background, the clusters we were talking about has three big groups. So cluster A had all the weird people, you know, they're like weird in the sense that these people kind of are always avoiding, and they're kind of not flexible, you know, they're too much into rules, regulations, and they want to do things according to their own kind of, not rules, regulation in the term, in the manner of an obsessed person, rather it's more like they have this fixed routines or fixed kind of patterns, and they are sometimes not very practical minded. And further, as we talked, there are some would be paranoia is one of the commonest. Pakistan makes more common, schizoid and schizotypal. Internationally, जो भी studies हैं, they usually rank it कि जो बहुत common disorders हैं, they are ranked about 1% or 1.5%. जो less common है, schizoid, schizotypal, they are about 0.5% of the percent of the population. But even if it's 1% of the population, think about 220 million. No, 1% of 220 million. Okay. The result still is a bit staggering. Cluster B is very much kind of interesting because it harbors four main groups, and all the groups are very exciting. they're very dramatic, they're very kind of, interesting in a way. For example, antisocial is a guy. Now just imagine her personality is hard. Just kind of make up a small kind of image, and I'll just tell the main traits and think of, try to imagine and think if somebody fits in that description. So antisocial is a person who just loves to break the laws. He does not care about any law. He likes to break red lights. He likes to go and have this shoplifting. He has no regard for any kind of rights of the other person. He would gladly do a cheating as his right. जिससे फ्रॉड लगता होगा फ्रॉड भी करेगा, धोखा भी दे सकता है, फायदा भी उठा सकता है, इमोशनली मैनिपुलेट भी कर सकता है, ठीक है. So this kind of a person who is not really looking forward to adhering to any kind of moral or social law. ठीक है. So these people are usually very successful because uh, if you're not hindered by kind of your own mind, if you don't have a very powerful consciousness, if you don't have any superego, something which tells you that this is wrong, this is right, it is the kind of an opposite of empathy, where if you don't have an empathy, then you don't care about the patient. You're thinking of the patient as a commodity who is going to pay, then you're going to deliver, or maybe you want him to pay more than it is necessary. Maybe you make up stories, and you kind of to make the money, you can kind of tell any kind of stories, and you can prescribe any kind of medication. So antisocial is kind of something like this. Borderline, we just talked about the borderline person is very dramatic, very above the board. It's an interesting person to be around because all the time some kind of drama is going on with this person. So one person in our crowd is, it's always jumping around, and कभी ये हो गया, कभी वो हो गया. It's kind of full. अगर खुशी भी होगी तो पूरी टॉप पे होगी, और गमी भी है तो पूरा नीचे जाके somehow. And dividing the people, whites and blacks, and men and women, and good women and bad women. Everything is divided into kind of two strong categories. और इसमें बीच का कोई रास्ता नहीं होता आमतौर पर. जैसे हम लोग मुसलमान और काफिर के बीच में, we don't hardly kind of we want to think about it. There could be some other category. It's always the extremes. So maybe the communities are also in a borderline state, heavily borderline. We just want that either we're too good or we're too bad. Either you're too nice or we're too pathetic. So we are not able to integrate the middle kind of ground. Histrionic, so borderline is 9 to 1, is 9 into 1 regarding 9 women to 1 man. So it's more in women. Antisocial is more in men. Histrionic is antisocial version of women. So the women are not antisocial just like men. So what they are about is that historicity means attention seeking, a kind of extreme attention seeking. So attention seeking is not a bad trait in itself. So we all love attention. We want to get the attention. We want to get kind of praise. We want to get appreciated. We all have that need. But sometimes this need from 10, 20, 30%, it goes to 70, 80, 90%. We all know some of the people who just want to be the center of the discussion in the class. They just want कि हर वक्त उन्हीं की बात हो, and everybody's kind of tired of their tactics, and it's very visible and palpable kind of attention seeking. और ये टेंशन सीकिंग बढ़ते बढ़ते बहुत लेवल तक बढ़ सकती है कि उसमें, जिससे हमने साइकियाट्री में बात की थी, सिक रोल बिहेवियर की भी, और abnormal sick road की, and even मैलिंगरिंग में भी, मैलिंगरिंग में प्रॉब्ली हार्डली उसका नहीं होगा, लेकिन समटाइम्स सिर्फ अटेंशन के लिए एक सिंड्रोम होता है कॉल्ड मन जॉनसन सिंड्रोम. एंड मन जॉनसन में क्या होता है कि व्हाट यू डू इज यू हार्म योर ओन सेल्फ, एंड योर मोटिवेशन इज जस्ट टू गेट some attention from the doctor or the facility and nothing else. And then there is Munchausen's by proxy, in which the mother harms the child. उसको कभी कोई उल्टी करवाने वाली चीज पिला देती है, कभी कोई उसको कट्स लगा देती है, कभी कोई अजीबोगरीब किस्म के, तो पेशेंट को वो लाती है हॉस्पिटल, तो उसकी कोई अजीबोगरीब, उसकी जो एक खला है उसकी शख्सियत के अंदर, उसकी तस्कीन होती है, एंड इट्स काइंड ऑफ वेरी वियर्ड, बट अगर आप डिटेल में जाते हैं तो यू फाइंड दैट द पर्सन हैज अ वेरी काइंड ऑफ strange and messed up history. So there is always a way to understand the patient. I mean, I think थोड़ा extreme पे चले गए हिस्ट्रॉनिक, अभी वापस आते हैं cluster B पे. Then there is narcissistic. Narcissistic is self-loving. You must have known the story of the Greek god Narcissus, वो जो पानी में अपना रिफ्लेक्शन देखता है और पूरी जिंदगी अपना रिफ्लेक्शन ही देखता रहता है. It was so mesmerized by his own kind of तो हमारे आपने देखा होगा बहुत सारे दोस्त अब आप they're too much into themselves, you know, selfies, better selfies, posting on the Facebook and post and then waiting कि कब उसकी उसकी दाद मिलेगी और खुशी होगी. तो एक थोड़े से लेवल का खास लेवल का नार्सिज्म होना इज नॉट बैड, इट्स गुड, बिकॉज वी मस्ट सेल्फ लव आवरसेल्फ. बट आफ्टर सम टाइम अगर एक खास लेवल से बढ़ जाता है तो इट काइंड ऑफ बिकम्स kind of burdensome, and people get starting bored, or they just think that you were very much too self-absorbed, self-obsessed. So everything in balance seems good. लेकिन कोई भी चीज अगर जरूरत से ज्यादा कर दे तो it brings a kind of a bad flavor. So we just keep on checking what we are doing, and it shouldn't be overboard or it shouldn't be kind of underdosed. So cluster A was the weird ones, cluster B was the dramatic ones, and cluster C are the worriers. They're always worrying. So all the people who are always seen being worried come into this. So either they are very avoidant, avoiding everything, avoiding gatherings, social gatherings, social meetings, probably lectures, or so that is kind of an avoidant trait. They try to avoid the situation. We all normally also try to avoid the state once in a while. So एक का दफा दो दफा avoid करना, that does not mean a personality disorder. That just shows you're all right. Dependent person is too much dependent. And now we are talking about personality disorders. The person who has dependence to such a level that he is in a disordered condition. So disordered dependent person would be too much dependent. किसी के बगैर खा नहीं सक रहे, बाजार नहीं जा सक रहे, लोगों से नहीं मिल सक रहे, एग्जाम देने के लिए भी अम्मा बस आते हैं, रिश्ते के लिए भी अम्मा बस आते हैं, अस्पताल आने के लिए भी आपके साथ है. सो वी नीड सम काइंड ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस इन आवर लाइफ. तो साथ वैसे जाना इज ऑल राइट, but if somebody is incapable of doing something without anybody else, that is kind of problematic. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is something different from obsessive compulsive disorder. So, obsessive compulsive traits are people that obsessive compulsive, uh, they would like to do things in a perfectionist sort of way, according to certain rules and regulations. They would like to do things in particular order. They would like to do things more like in predictable fashion. सो ये ट्रेड्स हैं, एंड ये इसका फर्क ओसीडी से आमतौर पे ये होता है कि दीज आर काइंड ऑफ लाइफ लॉन्ग डेवलप्ड, एंड clinically it's a bit difficult to differentiate both of them. So if a patient who's coming and who is have a OCD personality, तो पर्सनालिटी को भी थिंक ऑफ इट एज अ कलरिंग, तो जो भी पेशेंट आपके पास आया, मतलब एक बंदा है was having gastric upsetness, right? So if he's a paranoid, schizoid, or schizotypal, his personality will color the situation, and he might not be talking too much about his symptoms. He might be sitting just telling you, yeah, I have this problem, and he might tell you it started like this, and he's socially awkward, he's not very opening up, it looks funny and weird, and this kind of things are going through your mind. Same patient, if it's a borderline antisocial histrionic, the antisocial one will say, I'm going to sue you, you're not doing your job, and this have doctor's fraud, and system sara kharab hai, and they might kind of manipulate you into getting what they want. They want to have the best doctor शोर डाल के रोला डाल के. So this is what usually the uh, journalists or kind of lawyers. So outdoor में या emergency में जब ऐसे लोग आते हैं who have this cards कि हम साफ साफ लाएं, they're using some traits of theirs themselves which are basically to manipulate and get what they want, and they're not really kind of interested in what kind of rules regulations are going on. Borderline is going to have another dramatic appearance. So sometimes they will say, डॉक्टर साहब आपने दवाई दी बहुत जबरदस्त है, बहुत जबरदस्त है, तो आपको वो उठा उठा के ऊपर पहुंचा देंगे. So you have to be careful with these patients. बातों में नहीं आ जाना, ठीक है? जितना ऊपर लेके जा रहे हैं उतना ही नीचे. और इनकी खास निशानी ये होगी कि डॉक्टर साहब फलां प्रोफेसर बिल्कुल फारिग, वो भी बिल्कुल ऐसा सी फलां फलां फलां. तो कुछ चार पांच की वो बेइज्जती करके जब आपकी तारीफ करेगा तो आप यकीन रखें कि दिस person is going to mention you all over the town the worst possible way. ठीक है? So you have to kind of calm them down. ज़्यादा ऊपर फूक नहीं भरवा लेनी अपने अंदर. Histrionic patient case will be very dramatic. पेट का दर्द जो होगा वो उसको बहुत ज़्यादा fanciful, लंबा चौड़ा उसमें explanations or it will be very dramatic. Narcissistic would also be kind of dramatic and too much self-concern. Plus, in C wala, that people will be showing same avoidance and would need a lot of reassurance, and sometimes they will try not to come to the hospital. They will avoid, and if they come, they will try to just go on, kind of avoid it. And the OCD guy would be too much into details, and they would like you to hear it about 2-3 times at least. And they will even write them down things. Now, writing is a good trait. I always tell my friends and patients and clients, okay, we must writing is a good trait, but sometimes it's very very overboard. So this was an example for your interest. अब हम आगे चलते हैं और आगे next हमारा जो अब we will just go through those 8 to 10 questions we which would like to use in the outdoor, because outdoor में आपके पास सिर्फ 4-5 मिनट होते हैं. ठीक है? स्टडीज बताती हैं कि एक डॉक्टर है वो आमतौर पे गवर्नमेंट में कम से कम 5 से 7 मिनट होते हैं उसके पास साइकेट्रिक पेशेंट्स के लिए. ठीक है? एंड मेक सेंस. वी हैव 220 मिलियन पॉपुलेशन एंड वी हैव अबाउट लेस देन 500 साइकेट्रिस्ट, एंड कई कई जगहों पे पूरे इलाके में सिर्फ एक साइकेट्रिस्ट है, कई कई जगहों पे वो भी नहीं है. अभी हमारी एक स्टूडेंट थी, शी बिकेम अ साइकेट्रिस्ट एंड शी वाज द फर्स्ट वन इन दिस करदू, एंड then there was another psychiatrist. फिर टूलू इलाके हैं बलूचिस्तान में रिसेंटली पिछले कुछ सालों में साइकेट्रिक डेवलप हुई. केपी के इन जगहों के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा साइकेट्रिस्ट मौजूद हैं. तो बड़े बड़े शहरों में बड़े बड़े ज़्यादा डॉक्टर्स मौजूद होंगे, छोटे छोटे शहरों में कम होंगे. तो न्यूयॉर्क के अंदर फॉर एग्जाम्पल सिर्फ न्यूयॉर्क के अंदर देयर आर अबाउट 5,000 साइकेट्रिस्ट. ठीक है? यूके के अंदर पाकिस्तानी साइकेट्रिस्ट पाकिस्तान से 3 to 4 times ज़्यादा है. तो जितनी मेच्योर सर्विसेज होती हैं वहाँ पे गुड पेस, गुड स्ट्रक्चर सिस्टम, तमाम तरह की सहूलियात होती हैं. चुनाचे साइकेट्री कुछ हद तक हर डॉक्टर को आनी चाहिए, और ये जो सवाल हैं आपको बहुत फायदेमंद देंगे, बिकॉज आप जो भी स्पेशलिटी में होंगे, इफ यू नो द पर्सनैलिटी ऑफ द पेशेंट, यू कैन प्रेडिक्ट दैट दिस पेशेंट इज गोइंग टू सू यू डेफिनेटली. आपको पहले से पता चल रहा है कि बॉर्डरलाइन है, एंटी सोशल है, तो you have to be a bit careful. Sometimes you will know that this patient will need more reassurance, so you can kind of hook them up with a psychologist beforehand, or that kind of pre kind of. तो जो अगले जो 8-10 सवाल हैं ये आप जिस भी स्पेशलिटी में जाएं, these would be very beneficial. ठीक है? आपकी अपनी सेल्फ असेसमेंट के लिए भी. Look, I was thinking कि any one of you would like to do a self assessment, and if you want my input in it, तो आप एक पेपर पेंसिल रखें अपने पास. तो जो पॉइंट मैं बोलूं उसके बारे में जस्ट राइट डाउन अ लिटिल बिट अबाउट योरसेल्फ. अपने आपको 10 में से मार्क्स दे दें कि अच्छा ये मेरे में शायद इतना है, एंड एट द एंड यू कैन काइंड ऑफ सेंड मी एंड वी कैन टॉक अबाउट इट. 8-10 सवाल क्या है? So, सबसे पहले वी विल स्टार्ट विद द डेवलपमेंट, मैच्योरिटी एंड द स्टेबिलिटी. सो व्हाट डज इट मीन कि बचपन से कैसे आपकी डेवलपमेंट हुई. Usually the parent answers, but sometimes the patient have some kind of a fair amount of information about his own development. कैसे बड़े हुए, बचपन में कैसे थे, रोते हुए ज्यादा चाइल्ड थे या कोई बहुत गुस्से वाले थे, माँ ने कैसे डिस्क्राइब किया, फिर छोटे क्लासों में क्या होता था, स्कूल जाना पसंद था नहीं पसंद था, स्कूल में लड़ाइयाँ होती थी, चुप होते थे, बहुत सारे दोस्त होते थे, टीचर्स आपको पसंद करते थे, सलाह देते थे, सो वी विल स्टार्ट विद ओपन एंडेड क्वेश्चंस, वी विल आस्क देम कि अपने बारे में बताएं, आपका बचपन कैसा गुजरा, आपने माँ बाप से अपने बारे में क्या सुना, आपके जो वालिदैन है वो क्या बताते हैं आपके बारे में, नाना दादी आपको क्या बताते हैं कि आप बचपन में बाकी बच्चों की निस्बत कैसे थे। यू ऑलवेज गिव देम अ क्लू कि अपने बारे में बताएं और जो आपने अपने बारे में सुना हुआ है बाय कंपैरिजन। तो ये छोटे छोटे रलके जिसको आप कहते हैं, गाड़ी रुक जाती तो हल्का हल्का यू हैव टू टॉक, यू हैव टू गिव सम झटका और रलका, और यू हैव टू इनपुट, तो पेशेंट काइंड ऑफ then starts moving. So you'll get to know about it, any special problems in the childhood, any problems regarding bullying, any problem regarding relationship, or Abhi, Dr. Sheen said about attachment styles. So definitely attachment style is a pre phase of the personality. तो attachment style होता है कि जब आप बच्चे होते हैं तो आप अपने बड़े से या अपने केयर गिवर से कैसे अटैच करते हैं. Some people are overly attached, some people are underly attached, some people are in a strangely fashion attached. और इसमें बल्कि मेरा क्योंकि साइकोएनालिसिस का शौक है ज़्यादा, तो उसमें what they do is they use a term of different positions. So positions से मुराद है कि there is a position called depressive position, which means kind of advanced stage of maturity, and there is a position called schizoid position, which is a underdeveloped state. And we will talk about psychodynamics at some stage. Like, let's move with this question. तो ये आपने पहला सवाल किया. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन यू विल आस्क के आपके बचपन में या अभी क्या ख्वाब है, आप क्या करना चाहते हैं जिंदगी में, व्हाट इज योर फैंटेसी लाइफ, हाउ इज योर स्पिरिचुअल लाइफ. ये क्वेश्चन देके यू विल गिव देम अ पॉज, and then you can explain them. Then you can say, everybody has an imagination, and it could be a very vivid imagination. What kind of things stimulate you? What kind of things you think about when you're alone or with others? What kind of connection you have with your own self or the others or the God? ठीक है. So उर्दू भी आप इसी तरह पूछेंगे कि आपके क्या ख्वाहिशात हैं, आप बड़े होकर क्या बनना चाहते थे, क्यों बनना चाहते थे, खाली वक्त में आप किन चीज़ों के बारे में सोच के आपको खुशी होती थी, आप अक्सर किन ख्यालों में रहते थे, आपको कौन सी चीज़ें सोच के मज़ा आता था या पसंद थी, और क्यों. तो ये इन क्वेश्चन से the patient will give you a very interesting kind of insight about his life. And spiritual में you then you can ask about कि आपका मजहब की तरफ कितना रुझान है, आप रसूमात में कितना ज़्यादा हैं या उसको समझने में ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टेड हैं, कौन कौन सी किताबें आपने पढ़ी, कहाँ से पढ़ी, आपको कौन आपका टीचर कौन है. तो पीपल विल कम विद इंटरेस्टिंग इंफॉर्मेशन एज इफ दे आर very spiritually active, or they're spiritually they have not started their life, or maybe they're into too much ritualistic religious practice, not really into understanding. ठीक है. तो जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन मिलेगी that will be helpful to kind of make an understanding of the person. Then you talk about self confidence, self reliance, and assertiveness. How much confident are you to do what you want to do? How much you rely on your own? How much you rely on the others? With how much force you go and kind of try to do something which you believe in. तो खुद एतमादी के बारे में कि आपके अंदर कितनी खुद एतमादी है, जो आप करना चाहते हैं आप कर लेते हैं, कि आपको किसी सहारे की जरूरत होती है, आप अपने ऊपर कितना इन्हिसार करते हैं, जरूरत से ज्यादा इन्हिसार नहीं करते, हर चीज अपने ऊपर खुद तो नहीं सॉल्व करने की कोशिश करते, और अगर आप कोई काम चाहते हैं तो उसमें आप जितना जोर लगाना चाहिए वो आप एसर्टिवनेस कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. तो यहाँ पे वो केसेस होंगे जहाँ पे पीपल कम एंड से हमें हम हरास हो जाते हैं, हमारे कोलीग्स हमें हरास कर देते हैं, हमारे बॉस हमें वर्बल अब्यूज करते हैं, वी वांट टू रिएक्ट बट वी कांट, हम चुप रहते हैं, हमें नहीं पता क्या होना चाहिए. Then you kind of talk about their rights and you empower them and you give them support and show them how we can tackle this. Social ability, how much social you are, how many friends you are, do you make friends yourself, do you initiate the friendships, do you maintain friendships, क्या आपके दोस्त आसानी से बन जाते हैं, क्या आप दोस्ती का शुरुआत करते हैं, क्या आप दोस्ती तोड़ने में ज़्यादा तेज हैं, बनाने में तेज हैं, दोस्ती रखने के आपको असूल पता है, दोस्त आपके बारे में क्या कहते हैं, लोग आपको देख के भाग तो नहीं जाते हो. So this kind of an information about the person. When you talk about the mood, okay, what kind of mood you have mostly, and what kind of mood you kind of spend most time in. आप अगर गुस्से में रहते हैं, उदासी में रहते हैं, घबराहट का शिकार रहते हैं, इस्तराबियत का शिकार रहते हैं, परेशानी का शिकार रहते हैं, या खुश मिजाज रहते हैं, बहुत यू वेरी होपफुल, पुरुमीद, ठीक है, तो उदास, तो ये यू ट्राई टू मेक a note about कि what is his predominant mood in his usual state. Then you question about the worries, coping mechanism, and avoidance dependence. Then you ask about, what kind of things worry you, and when there is a problem, how do you solve? Who is your go-to person? What is the first kind of help you ask for, and how much you reach to other people for the help? Okay, so you ask these kind of questions, and आपको किससे घबराहट होती है, चीज़ों का सामना कैसे करते हैं, क्या आप आराम से दूसरे लोगों की मदद ले लेते हैं कि नहीं, क्या आप मुसीबत से भागते हैं, दूर से भाग जाते हैं, बहुत दूर रहते हैं. So all these questions will again kind of give you a further clue to the person's personality. मैंने देखा ये सब डिफरेंट पोर्शंस, क्लस्टर्स के डिफरेंट पोर्शंस हम मुख्तलिफ तरीकों से पूछ रहे हैं. यहाँ पे we will ask about how much of a perfectionist you are, and what is your attitude usually towards the people, towards yourself, towards the society, what kind of beliefs you have. So anyone having a particular belief will kind of have a particular behavior. So as हम जिस हमने बात की थी शुरू में कि our thought structures our personality. If you want to change someone, change their thoughts. If you want to change someone, you'll have to uh, you'll have to cultivate their behavior through changing their belief systems or attitudes. You give them information, you give them the standards, you tell them about the other people, how people actually think. देखें एक बंदा जब उसकी पर्सनालिटी बन रही है तो he has usually in the start no idea that everyone is being developed in a certain way which could be entirely different from that person. So आहिस्ता आहिस्ता once the person is more aware about their belief system and how they are thinking, तो फिर they can kind of check their behavior, or they can check their what they're doing, and they can review or improve or further deteriorating sometimes. You talk about antisocial and impulsiveness, that how much you like or usually break the rules, and how much regard you have for the society rules, how impulsive you are, आप सोचने से और अमल करने के दरमियान में कितना वक्त लगाते हैं, कितनी जल्दी कोई काम कर गुजरते हैं, क्या आप सोचते हैं कोई काम करने से पहले, कितनी देर सोचते हैं, कोई मशवरा करते हैं, ठीक है. So that starting impulsiveness shows a person's uh, how volatile the person could be. Then you ask about how much trust you trust the system, or you trust yourself, and how much hostile you feel towards the other. आप दूसरों पे क्या आसानी से एतबार कर लेते हैं, या आप बहुत गुस्से में रहते हैं, दूसरों पे एतबार करना आपके लिए बहुत मुश्किल है, और ज़्यादातर आप दुश्मनी के या नुकसान पहुंचाने के ख्यालात आपको रहते हैं. Then you ask about how much attention you like about yourself, how much people think you're attention seeking. You think you have these moving between the extremes of mood problem. क्या आपको लगता है कि आप अपने ऊपर तवज्जो गैर जरूरी या बहुत ज्यादा चाहिए आपको तवज्जो, क्या लोगों ने आपको बताया कि आपकी तवज्जो की जो डिमांड है वो जो से बहुत ज़्यादा है, क्या आप बहुत इंतहाई अल्फाज में लोगों को डिवाइड करते हैं, या कैटेगरीज में या खानों में, आपके लिए लोग या बहुत अच्छे होंगे या बहुत बुरे होंगे, ठीक है. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ कैटेगरी कुड बी. सो यहाँ पे हम अख्ताम की तरफ आते हैं. इट वाज अ स्मॉल एक्टिविटी. आई जस्ट वांटेड टू गिव यू एन आउटलाइन, एंड एंड पे आके यू विल समराइज द सिम्टम्स टू द पेशेंट, एंड अगर वो मरीज कुछ बातों में अपने आप को कोई अपना बयान चेंज करना चाहे, तब्दील करना चाहे, तो मेरी बात कर रहे होते तो ये कोई इसको फोरेंसिक असेसमेंट कि जो आपने मुंह से निकल गया उसको आपने पकड़ के बैठ जाना है। आप उसको तस्हीह करने की मौका देते हो कि अच्छा शायद हो सकता है मरीज को कुछ समझ आई हो, या कोई जो परफेक्शनिस्ट होगा ही वुड लाइक टू करेक्ट कि नहीं डॉक्टर साहब मेरा ख्याल था ये है, मैंने ये बोल दिया, असल में मेरा मतलब ये था। जो क्लस्टर ए वाले हैं वो तो पहले ही कम बोल रहे होंगे, ठीक है, सो उनको यू हैव टू प्रॉम्प्ट देम एंड यू हैव टू स्पीक एंड से कि नो आपने ये बातें लिखी हैं क्या ये सही है, या इसमें कोई और आप चीज ऐड करना चाहते हो। ड्रामेटिक को आपको उससे इमोशंस को कंट्रोल करना पड़े, बीच में गुस्से में आ जाए, छोड़ दे, या कुछ किस्म की चीज। यहाँ पे मैं इख्तिताम करता हूँ आज के मौजू का। आप लोगों की तवज्जो का बहुत शुक्रिया। We have 5 minutes left, and if you have any question, we will answer the question, and then you can leave for the next lecture. Shukriya. All right, I think the okay, some of the questions which have been posed, I'll answer them.